This guy was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment for helping his best friend get rid of a corpse. His name is James Walker. He was 22 years old by the time the story started. James was an ordinary American struggling to survive. He worked multiple jobs, constantly worried about rent, bills, and putting food on the table. Life seemed to throw obstacle after obstacle in his path, while his best friend Wilson Carter came from a very different background. Wilson is a son of a powerful state politician. Raised in luxury, he grew up in a world of private schools, expensive cars, and lavish parties. Money was never a concern for him. If he wanted something, he got it. In the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, Wilson and James appeared to have the kind of bond many people envied. Despite their vastly different lifestyles, the two had been friends for years. Wilson often invited James to exclusive clubs, expensive restaurants, sporting events, and luxury vacations. Their social media pages were filled with smiling photos, but beneath the surface, something was slowly eating away at James. Whenever he was stressed, Wilson never asked what was wrong. Whenever James seemed troubled, Wilson ignored it. Then came one evening, after years of observing the same behavior, James finally confronted him. "Why do you never ask how I'm doing?" Wilson laughed. "Because asking someone how they're doing gives them permission to ask for help." The answer stunned James. Wilson continued casually, "If I ask, then people start telling me their problems. Then they expect money or favors. It's easier not to ask." James forced a smile, but inside, resentment began to grow. Years passed. James watched Wilson spend thousands of dollars on parties, luxury watches, designer clothes, and exotic trips. Yet Wilson had never once offered financial assistance to the friend who stood beside him through everything. What Wilson didn't realize was that James had started seeing him differently. Everything changed during the summer of 2024. Wilson's girlfriend had traveled overseas for several weeks. With the house to himself, he decided to throw one of his famous parties. Before the party started, Wilson asked James to bring beautiful girl to the party, and James agreed as usual to help him get a beautiful girl. James said, "Don't worry, I've got someone." Hours later, James arrived with a stunning young woman named Vanessa. She quickly became the center of attention. The night seemed perfect, but shortly after midnight, party closed. Everyone starts leaving to their various homes. Wilson and Vanessa disappeared upstairs into his bedroom. Then something horrifying happened. About 40 minutes later, Wilson rushed downstairs in panic, shouting, "James, I'm in trouble. Please follow me upstairs." His face had gone pale. James followed him upstairs. Vanessa was lying motionless on the floor. No response, no movement. "She is dead." Wilson suggested they call 911. James stared at the body in disbelief. Then he shook his head. "No, we can't call 911. Think about who you are. Your father is a politician. The media will destroy you. Everyone will think you killed her. And then your girlfriend will find out you cheated on her." Wilson became more confused and overwhelmed with fear, and they both suggest they should get rid of her corpse. Neither of them know that this single decision would change everything. In the darkness of the early morning, they both carried the body out of the mansion. James drove toward a remote wooded area outside the city and threw the body there. Wilson then decided to send James the sum of $1,000. For the first time in their entire friendship, as a gesture of gratitude for helping him through what he believed was the worst night of his life. Yet guilt consumed Wilson, and he couldn't sleep for days. Yet strangely, James seemed calm. Neither of them knew the disaster was just starting. 3 weeks later, Wilson received an anonymous message. "I know what you did." Attached, an image showed him and James carrying Vanessa's corpse. Minutes later, James received the same message. Few minutes later, the sender called Wilson and asked for the sum of $17,000, and also threatening to release the picture on social media if they failed to make the payment. Wilson panicked. The blackmailer seemed to know everything, so Wilson had no option but to pay. So he paid. For a while, the blackmailer disappeared, but few weeks later, more messages and more threats start coming again. Wilson felt trapped, and he was like, "I have to do something to stop this blackmailer," so he hired private investigators, digital experts, and security consultants, yet nobody could identify the blackmailer. Months later, the case took an unbelievable turn. One evening, Wilson received a mysterious phone, but this time it was Vanessa, the woman he believed was dead. Then she told him everything. The death had been fake. The collapse in the bedroom had been rehearsed. The fake body disposal had been planned. The blackmail photographs had been arranged also. Every step of the nightmare had been carefully designed, and the mastermind behind it all was James. He knew Wilson's greatest weakness wasn't violence. It was fear. Fear of scandal. Fear of destroying his father's political career. Vanessa admitted that she and James believed they could extort money indefinitely. At first, they only wanted a few $1,000s. But once the first payment succeeded, greed took over. Immediately, Wilson went to the police and handed them all the evidence Vanessa provided against James. Then, bang! James was arrested. Bang! Vanessa was also arrested. James was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, and Vanessa was granted bail because she cooperated with Wilson. During the trial, prosecutors described the plot as one of the most elaborate extortion schemes they had seen, involving former friends.